the number one piece of advice in one place that I saw was like don't overreact to what happens in the first couple games, right? Don't overreact to what happens in the first couple games. And I think a lot of people hear that or they see that and they go, yeah, that's right. Don't overreact. Of course. Because like what, let's say like the Yankees start 0-3, but they had a really high win total. Like they'll get it back, whatever. Well, the really funny thing about awards, especially, is actually in baseball awards, I am trying to overreact as much as humanly possible. And that's actually like the way better way to go. So I was looking at a stat that Baseball Reference keeps. It was invented by Bill James, called game score. That's how they score pitching starts, or how he scores pitching starts. And I don't really care whether like it's that effective or there's a better way to do it. That's not the point. The point is it's publicly available, so I can use it and collect it. And the really funny thing is, for Cy Young winners in both leagues, like you can use it to help answer the question: do Cy Young winners have to like kill it out of the gate? It's a long season. Don't overreact to what happens. But even in, like what's their average game score for April? What's their highest game score for April? Like, do they have to have a performance where they're particularly excellent early on to either put themselves in the minds of voters or just to even demonstrate that their stuff is particularly good that season? And so it's so funny because like in several places, and we hear that for all sports, it's like, well, like don't overreact to what we saw the first couple weeks. And when you look at these game scores, you're like, oh, actually, it's the exact opposite. That's the worst piece of advice for this. I'm sure maybe it's good for betting money lines or totals or whatever. I have no idea. But for Cy Young specifically, there's like a kind of a minimum threshold where it's like in your first couple starts, even like here's how I would put it. If you're bad twice in a row to start the year, there's basically no precedent for you ever winning Cy Young, even twice in a row. That's like the next 6 days. So like it's going to be April 7th and somebody's going to be eliminated.
I was told not to overreact.
Yeah, right. But don't overreact after 1 or 2 games. Actually react as strongly as you would react to anything. There's basically only one historical example, I think. Is it even one? Where's Robbie Ray? He's always the answer to this question. I think there's really like only like one historical example of a pitcher having a below average game score twice to start the season, like the first 2 starts, and winning. 2 starts. Most pitchers that win the Cy Young Award start like 30, 35 games, somewhere in that range, basically. And in 2, you're below average twice. You're not going to win. Like that's it. That's the end. And of course, things aren't that absolute. Like at some point, someone will do it. But it's just so interesting how much like even just the first 2 in a season that takes absolutely forever is so predictive of who's going to end up winning. And then over the first month, the pitchers that win, and this is a little more explainable because figures start about 5 games this month, maybe 6 because of like the weirdness of we're starting at the end of a calendar month. You have to have like a game score in a game that's absolute, like a top 1% game score at least once. Like you have to have like one start where it's like, okay, like, 8 innings, shutout, 10 Ks, whatever. Like 8 innings, no runs, 10 Ks. Like, okay, like that's now like this person is maybe going to be something that's going to be a thing this year. That's a phenomenon that we're going to have to follow. So I just thought that contrast was really interesting. So like when you're watching starting pitch, like everybody's, number one starting pitcher, unless they're injured, is pitching today because all the teams play today for the first time on opening day in forever. And if they don't, and a team has 2 really good pitchers, they'll pitch tomorrow or whatever. And actually the starts are like quite meaningful. And the starts the first couple weeks are quite meaningful, especially if you're bad. Like the pressure gets ramped up immediately just using historical comps in terms of like, if you're just bad today, then like, if you're bad again, like that might kind of just be it. And like, think about how slow the market's going to be to move it. What if DeGrom's bad twice? like think about what happens in the market. What if Ohtani's bad twice? Think about what happens to the market, like resistant to move, probably won't move very much. And just using the history of the award. And again, it's like there's always going to be historical outliers, but I always like to say, like, I just like to play the probabilities. Like, how does it tend to go? And the way it tends to go is like, you got to at least be okay out of you don't have to be great. You got to at least be okay. And you got to be pretty good. And in the first month, you have to actually be like pretty awesome at least once. And so I just think it's funny because I think in all sports, like commonly accepted advice is just like, well, don't overreact. So like, the first couple weeks, like, like whatever's bad will become good and whatever's good will become bad again. Be like, actually, Like, I'm sure people thought the Kings would be bad after the first month of the NBA season. And, they actually clinched a playoff spot for the first time in forever last night. And they light a giant laser beam now. And it's like pretty awesome. And that the Thunder wouldn't make the playoffs. And you go down the list basically in terms of that Brooke Lopez wouldn't win Defensive Player of the Year, probably a ton of resistance to that the first couple months as he got off to a really good start. And actually those things were really real and they happened. So in baseball, it seems like what you get from a pitching standpoint, especially the first month of the season, but even in the first couple starts, tends to matter a lot. I just thought that was really interesting.